Omar begins the preface on his book on avatars with, of course, discussing the blockbuster Avatar, directed by James Cameron. But he's not satisfied with this definition of Avatar. But what he does appreciate from the movie is its description of Avatar as an experience, an encounter with one's own possibility or potential. But as one of the videos mentions, these avatars begin out of nothing, and it is through our experiences in history and environment that these avatars develop and continually become. I guess that this means that each person has a multitude of their own avatars that they have created and written throughout their lives. They can then draw upon and inhabit these avatars. By inhabiting these avatars, each of us is descending into an identity. They don't represent our whole identity, but different aspects of our identity. Apparently, Ulmer references the Avatar to the feminist movement and the Madonna horror complex. But the author of the video isn't really satisfied with this meaning. She states that by creating and descending into an avatar, each person has the chance to remake it in any way they want. This author references this to the creation of the new models of this third feminist wave movement. These women are creating their own avatars in regards to the feminist movements. Instead of descending into a traditional feminist identity, they have shaped it. So your avatar then doesn't have to match any particular stereotype. You write it and create it, and it's through these avatars that you interact with the world and make meaning. This is reminiscent of some of the concepts we are learning in our workplace communication class. A particular view of culture and communication takes a standpoint that our identity is performed through micro-practices. But we don't just perform one identity. Our surroundings, environment, power relationships, and personal experiences change throughout not only our lives, but also on a day-to-day basis. We have multiple identities then that we perform depending on the context that we are in. I like this connection of performance to experience. Both of these words indicate the action that is required as we become our avatars. They are not some static idea or concept, but something that is constantly being created. These avatars, though, are images or icons, as one video points out, that we inhabit in order to make meaning from flash reason. I was having a little bit of difficulty connecting the idea of avatar to the idea of flash reason. I can see where they could be separate experiences. And why I think I was confused is because I was trying to decide and realize the connection between the avatar and flash reason by starting with the avatar. I was trying to work flash reason with what I was understanding about avatar, but I now think it would be easier to understand them together if you consider flash reason first. Ulmer talks about flash reason, which he describes as a sudden thought or thinking at the speed of light. Ulmer identifies this as the skill set that will be needed for a new apparatus of electricity. The convergence of media and the proliferation of images is causing us to rely on flash reason as we take in images and digital media. But where does this flash reasoning come from? Where do we make the decisions and choices instantly? This is where I believe the idea of avatars come in. We are constantly creating and performing multiple identities, and it is through the descent into an avatar that we are able to conduct flash reasoning. I also really like the analogy of the petri dish that one of the videos used briefly. Our experiences and traditions build up and form an avatar, the petri dish. Flash reason then germinates or emerges from this accumulation in the petri dish. Without the petri dish, we wouldn't have the basis for our flash reasoning. There isn't just one petri dish, though. Everyone has several petri dishes that they can descend into in order to germinate flash reasoning. This accumulation, though, isn't simply a bunch of fluids in a small dish. These experiences build up and develop into a wisdom, and it is this wisdom that we pull from in order to conduct flash reasoning. Ulmer uses several terms for this wisdom: practical wisdom, prudence, phronesis, but he defines it as a time wisdom, the capacity to make an appropriate decision in an instant by taking the measure of a particular situation in its temporal context. Basically, I think this boils down to being able to do the right thing in the right moment. Ulmer identifies his goal then as the revival of this wisdom, the virtue of making an instant judgment at the right time, within flash reason as the basis for a new logic in order to deal with the speed of our digital world. We use our wisdom through the lenses of our avatars in order to make meaning and interact in the world. But if I'm even close to understanding Ulmer's ideas of avatars, flash reason, and prudence, there's one topic he discusses that I really struggled with: the allegory of prudence. One in the video even references this phrase as confusing and then has an aha moment at the end. The allegory of prudence is a representation of our point of departure for thinking about judgment. It builds off of our personal experience with some decision in the past. It involves the wisdom with the decision, the mood, and even the moral framework that surrounded this decision. But while these make up some of the recipe for the allegory, the description of prudence as punctum, the moment where one is jolted into clarity, helped me realize that the allegory needs to be based off of one's personal experience where they felt this jolt, where the answer for whatever decision they were trying to work out became clear. So what are some possible examples of these ideas that Omar identifies? Obviously, we've been talking about The Walking Dead and Flash Reason. After reading this, I think I now understand it a little better. For each person that plays the game, the decision they make is not only built off of the in-game experiences that they've had, but the experience they've had in their life as well. At one point in the first episode of the game, you have to decide to save either Doug or Carly. Before I played the game, we discussed this in class, this exact choice in class, and so when I started to play, I realized I would have to make this decision. I also remember Brian mentioning that he chose to save Doug because he didn't trust Carly. Because I had these experiences, I paid close attention to these two characters, knowing I would be deciding their fate. I questioned each of these characters multiple times and really focused on how they responded to me. This caused me to accumulate more in my petri dish than perhaps the first-time players, and caused me to save Doug over Carly.